Imagine the sky turning black in the middle of a sunny day. The air grows heavy and still, like the world itself is holding its breath. And then, a sound. A sound louder than a freight train. A roar that drowns out thought, drowns out prayer, and drowns out everything except survival. In moments like this, homes vanish, trees snap like matchsticks, cars fly, and lives change forever. But here's the part that no one can explain. Because in the middle of chaos, some people said that they weren't alone. Children spoke of glowing figures, strangers with wings like stained glass, hands on their shoulders, voices urging them to hold on, protectors that appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as suddenly. Were they angels, hallucinations, or something else entirely? All anyone knew is that on that day, in the heart of one of the worst storms the United States had ever seen, the impossible seemed to walk among them.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, the podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. I'm your host, Tyler Bentz, and this is your other host,
Woody Brown.
Now, you're going to fix that, aren't you? I need you to fix that in post.
Yeah. God, I don't even know if I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix that.
It's
going to have to end up being, that's the way it is.
Oh, my gosh.
And we're all going to laugh about it together.
We sure are. Anywho, how's your day going? How's your week?
How big a boy are you?
Whatever happened to that guy? What was his name?
What
was it? Rodney
Roy D. Mercer.
Oh.
Roy D. Mercer.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I had like a roommate that was super into him.
Yeah.
And I always had like CDs of them and stuff. And there's only, a handful of times you can hear the How Big a Boy Are You before it just becomes like, okay.
I mean, it was pretty funny though at the time.
Yeah. True.
Man, it's, I'm not yet to the point to where you're going to hear your trusty co-host say, it's looking a little spooky outside. But it is looking a little dreary, and
yeah,
I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know if it's because, we talk a lot off of the mic or whatever about how much we can't wait until fall, but also just our thoughts about what we have planned, for the spooky season. And I think maybe that's why I don't know, man. I find myself falling into that mindset.
Yeah.
Is that a pun? Already. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like I'm getting more in the mood for some spooky movies.
Oh yeah, me too.
I even thought about going through the old Nightmare on Elm Street collection and Friday the 13th as well. It's been about a year or so.
Yeah, it's been about a year. Wait, I thought you did the whole Freddy series last year.
Yeah, I do. I watch them about once every year.
Oh, I think
and by the time I get to the end, I'm so sick of them.
Yeah,
I can't wait to be done. But I'm at that point now where I can't wait to watch them again. So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. What's weird is that for some reason, like in my mind, I associate like the later ones with just being awful. But it's like short-term memory because I'm always like super impressed by the Wes Craven's Last Nightmare or New Nightmare?
New Nightmare.
Where it's
Nightmare.
like pretty meta and they're like making the movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's really cool.
And just off the top of my head, I can't remember if Scream came first or if that came first, because it seems to kind of rob that idea.
Oh, right.
You know, I don't know.
No,
That's
I think Scream.
Something to look up later, because today
Okay.
I'm going to keep you on track, and we're talking about this case this is one of those cases that Tyler brought to my attention. He kind of just mentioned it several times when we're sort of planning or trying to plan what we want to do next. This title kind of kept on just popping into my head. I'm thinking, what is this? You know,
which I think for like 2 years, I just said the title, and you probably didn't even have a clue what that was.
Didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue even what it was associated with.
Right.
In fact, I think you probably remember I texted you after I started digging in, and I'm like, I can't believe this just happened not too long ago. You know, what is that, 13 years ago? 14 years ago? And so that was mind-blowing. And then I didn't have any idea that it, you know, sort of revolved around this tornado and all this. So all that to say, I kind of, you know, said, hey, let's do this one this week. I feel like in some ways we've, you know, like some years we sort of end up talking a lot about, you know, maybe time travel or dimensions and that kind of thing. And in some seasons, and I feel like here lately, we've been talking, well, I don't want to dive into that just yet because I don't want to give too much of away about maybe my thoughts about it all. So without further ado, man, I think we need to dive in.
Dude, I'm super excited. First, let me just say that I could swear that I remember hearing this like on the newscast, like when it happened, because this was like what we're about to talk about was a very, very like big event because it was so, well, you'll see. But I remember kind of like what you're saying, like, you know, hearing just the title. And I remember hearing it and being like, what? That sounds fake. And then, you know, later I would discover like, wow, there's like, this is actually pretty legit.
Yeah. So it all kind of starts May 22nd, 2011. See what I mean? Like I said, not that long ago, in Joplin, Missouri. Now, Joplin's a town of about 50,000 people in the Ozarks. Seemingly, the pace of life is certainly slower than, you know, let's say New York or even Atlanta. Just, you know, nice and calm.
Yeah.
This is a Sunday afternoon. Reportedly, the day started out just absolutely beautiful. Sun shining. It was just a gorgeous time. And, you know, this is the time of year people are going to graduation ceremonies. They're going to church on Sunday. And then out of seemingly nowhere came an F5 tornado. Now, that's one of the strongest classifications possible for tornadoes. So just absolutely
horrible,
extremely powerful. Not just a funnel cloud here, but not just a storm. This thing was like a monster. Listen to this. At its peak, it was nearly a mile wide with winds over 200 miles an hour.
Man.
You know, if you're picturing this in your head, it's an entire wall of destruction that's just grinding its way straight across the city. Now, what's scary is this past summer, I was driving toward St. Louis, Missouri, and literally there was a tornado, in a storm that was, I could barely see. I had my family. It was already nighttime. And we were supposed to go to the St. Louis Cardinals game, but it got canceled because ahead of us in St. Louis, we're about an hour away, a terrible tornado was like going through. Man. And I remember Clay like texting me and said, I bet that game's, you know, I doubt you guys are going. So, and let me just say, to me, growing up, you know, hurricanes and that kind of stuff never scared me because for the most part, you can kind of plan ahead and just get out of town. Tornadoes have always been that thing that just terrifies me because at night, it's like you can't necessarily see them coming. You know what I mean? Let's say your power goes out and you don't have radio or television to tell you where it's at. You know, of course, I'm imagining more as if it's like 1996 or something where you don't have a cell phone that, you know, you can look at the weather. But even still, they're just terrifying, okay? Here in Joplin, in less than an hour, with this humongous tornado ripping through, it caused so much devastation that Joplin just really would never be the same. Well, in some reports I've heard, you know, almost $3 billion in damage. Other ones were like closer to 7.
Jeez.
More than 9. And I'm not sure if that 7 billion is sort of also including, because Joplin wasn't the only area that was affected by the storm, but more than 900 homes were destroyed, entire neighborhoods just shredded to pieces, big box stores collapsed. I mean, the roof of the Home Depot like flew off.
Yeah.
Their local hospital was completely leveled. And then, of course, worse and most tragic of all, 161 lives were lost. It remains one of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history and one of the costliest tornadoes ever.
Yeah. I think at that time it was the deadliest U.S. tornado since like 1947.
Yeah.
I think they said.
You know, and to bring it back home to where we are, you know, we had a really, really deadly tornado in Gainesville, Georgia, back when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. He actually came to visit Gainesville, Georgia because of the devastation.
How was that?
I wasn't alive, so, okay, nice. But, and as we'll see, as with so many disasters, in the middle of all this horror and chaos, something else emerged. Something some said to be beautiful, something mysterious. Survivors, especially children, began talking about glowing, winged beings who appeared in the storm, protecting them, shielding them, guiding them, comforting them. And from that moment on, they became known as the Butterfly People of Joplin, Missouri.
Man.
And this is really where our story begins. And also, you know, when Tyler told me, hey man, I really want to do the Butterfly People, you know, I'm thinking, what in the world is he talking about?
Oh, yeah.
But there is something about that name and title and that idea that just immediately, you know, if you're a fan of this type of thing, makes you want to dig deeper.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the perfect embodiment of, you know, when you hear the term on the show and other shows like high strangeness, it's like it just fits perfectly in that under that umbrella.
Right. And part of the reason why we coined the term rad strangeness is because, you know, a lot of people have different ways of, I guess, defining that. And we were just, you know, we wanted to say, well, we're just going to incorporate it in our umbrella of rad strangeness.
Let me take that again. It fits perfect under the umbrella of rad strangeness. So.
Okay. All right. So first we got to start out with the well, they're all pretty well known, but this is one of the most well-known accounts and really kind of cemented the phrase butterfly people. So this father and his 2.5-year-old daughter were caught in the middle of this tornado while driving. And this is another thing here, man. As I was kind of writing all these down and getting them ready, as we were driving this past summer, you know, like I said, we went through Missouri, but we also went through Kansas. And we were basically driving through Tornado Alley, and there were storms while we were out and about. The whole time I was thinking, like, what are you supposed to do if you're in a car?
Get in a ditch.
Yeah. I don't know how long it's been since you've driven through Kansas, but the area we were,
oh yeah,
no ditches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm just thinking, I don't know. Anyhow, those of you with tips that live out in that area, shoot them over just in case I ever drive through there again. Anyhow, a father and his 2.5-year-old, they're in this car. The car gets thrown completely off the road. It flips, it rolls, and then finally comes to rest, and it's all mangled. Somehow, miraculously, both of them completely unhurt. Later on, the little girl insisted that butterfly people had been in the car with them the entire time. Not just one, but multiple. Her dad, of course, was like, you know, and Tyler, you remember your kids being 2.5, and I certainly remember, I think I've said this story before, where Jane, you know, the daycare lady was like, yeah, Jane was telling us a funny story about how her grandma went to jail this weekend, and we're like, what?
Yeah.
So, you know, when they're 2.5, they say some stuff.
Right.
So he's like, no, baby, it was just us in the car. But she didn't budge. She said, no, Daddy, they were sitting with us. They kept us safe.
Yeah.
And that alone, I mean, can you imagine just kind of being, I mean, that would have shocked me. You know, you've been through this traumatic thing with your daughter. You're thankful to be alive. But then she sees something well enough that she can articulate it to you in the aftermath of that.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I'm just fighting to like hold back, but it is something that's so like specific and like weird. You know, it's like that. I mean, as we continue, you're going to see that like there's. I mean, to me, it's kind of it's a little undeniable, just in how like specific it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially I know it's hard for me to keep from just like diving into. So let's go through a couple more of these cases here.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
It's a pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire. You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you?
Is anyone out there?
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler, and you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now back to our show. This wasn't the only vehicular sort of close call, so to speak. Another boy was in a truck with his father, and he recalled seeing a flying car through the air directly kind of toward them. By all logic, it should have smashed straight into their windshield, but at the last moment, it shifted course and missed them completely. The father admitted there was no logical reason for the car to veer away, no wind pattern, no obstacle. The boy later said that he saw two massive, what he called them, angels, holding the car back and tossing it aside like a toy. Another story where a mother and daughter were trapped in their car. Now, they're trying to do Tyler's, and I've heard the ditch thing before too, but they're trying to do, what you said, and that is to crawl into a ditch for cover. The tornado started bearing down on them. Now, again, guys, this is a tornado that's potentially a mile wide at this point. Just imagine what that must seem like,
Yeah, I don't think
it's just ripping apart everything in its path.
I don't think the ditch trick's gonna work.
Well, mentally,
Yeah.
Just imagine now you're there with your family, and you're, in a car, and you're like, everybody get out. They're like, Dad, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? Now, these folks in Kansas or in Missouri, in this case, they're probably used to it. And so they're like, okay. So anyway.
Well, and also looking up on a little bit of the stuff, so it would be considered like a supercell, which, you think of like a storm and it's like, oh man, it kind of gets like a little dark outside. And of course the sun's covered and stuff. But apparently in these like supercells, it gets like pitch black. It's like in the middle of night.
Yeah. That's the other part too, man. It's just so scary.
Yeah,
it's close enough in the evening where it's just dark. And even if it wasn't, let's say it's like 5 p.m. or something, even if it's not, nighttime, so to speak, even in an intense thunderstorm, we had one just the other day, this last week, that it got so dark all of a sudden, and you're like, man, holy smokes. So anyways, this mom and daughter, they just witness all this stuff ripping apart in its path, and somehow they survive without a scratch. And then afterward, the daughter looks at her mom and says, weren't they beautiful? Didn't you see their wings? And she described these rainbow-colored wings and these angelic figures that had sort of surrounded them. And yet, the mom didn't see anything.
Yeah.
What's interesting here, and a quick sort of aside, or not really an aside, but an interesting sort of observation, is that these details, man, they just amaze me. You've got these rainbow-colored wings, and I mean, when you hear about reports of things like angels, or we've kind of mentioned it previously in other episodes, you've got the white robes and the glowing halos.
Right.
The where do you think like these rainbow wings kind of come from?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that again. That ties to that just sort of strange, like sort of the outlier. I mean, I think the typical, maybe not even skeptical sort of, response to this is like, oh well, they were just thinking that they were seeing angels and stuff. But again, it's like rainbow colored wings. That's just not really a thing that's like normal, especially in like the sort of the modern zeitgeist. Like when you see paintings or you see whatever drawings or depictions of angels, it's always like white wings. So
yeah, and more like sometimes even like feathered,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I will say though, there is, and I didn't even think about this until just now, but in like Islamic art, sometimes they will feature their quote unquote like angels or whatever, and they will have sort of multicolored wings, which is kind of interesting. I don't think like this, I think that's more like, if there's a painting of like 4 angels, one would have like red wings, one would have blue wings, one not sort of rainbow colored,
right? Check this out. There's this 5-year-old boy caught outside in an open field. Again, kind of a worst nightmare scenario not only if you're a parent, but if you're that 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You're in this open field. There are no ditches to dive into, There is no lowest point on the ground. There's no shelter. There's no walls. There's nothing between him and a mile-wide monster of wind and debris flying at him. Houses are literally exploding nearby. Trees are ripping out of the ground.
Yeah.
Now, when they find him afterward, he was standing there unharmed, with wreckage all around him, sort of oddly arranged, they said, like it had been bent away from him. The boy said that 3 glowing figures with butterfly wings had walked across the field to him. Wherever they stood, the flying debris bounced aside or completely vanished. He said that they formed a kind of circle around him until the storm passed. Then they smiled and disappeared.
That's so cool.
I mean, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now, just immediately in my head, when I had gotten about this far in the research, because a lot of these cases are from the child's perspective, I thought, okay, in some ways that kind of makes sense potentially. We've talked about this on the show before, because the innocence of children and stuff, perhaps they're not only more likely, but just maybe it explains how they were able to see something that was potentially angelic,
right?
And the adults didn't. You know what I mean? Okay, and while they are the main storytellers here, they're not the only ones. Check this out. This deputy sheriff found this 4-year-old boy wandering in a field 6 miles away from St. John's Hospital. Now, this was the hospital, of course, that I mentioned earlier that was completely leveled.
Yeah.
Dozens of people died there, and it's, horrific. But this boy was perfectly unharmed, not even a scratch. When asked how he got there, he simply said, "The angels brought me. They set me down here." 6 miles, man. No injuries, no explanation. Here's another one where a father and son were outdoors as the tornado ripped through. Winds again so strong they ripped the dad's shoes completely off of his feet. Now, this father and son should have been, completely obliterated, by all accounts. But both survived completely unscathed. The boy said that butterfly people hovered above them the entire time.
Wow.
This imagery, man, that keeps coming up again and again, these hovering or enveloping, really, protectors.
And one thing, too, like, that we should specify, like, there are different sort of, I'm sure you're going to get to them, but there are a few different sort of reports on, like, and I'm trying not to jump the gun here, but like,
just go ahead.
Oh, is it an angel? Is it this and that? But it's like, again, what we're talking about is when they're saying butterfly, they're talking about beings with like butterfly wings.
Yeah.
Not sort of angelic feathered wings. And yes, we can get into, that was that was more of a mechanism created in the Renaissance for paintings to depict. Angel means messenger, so that was sort of depicting. Oh, well, to get to one place to another quickly, you would have to have wings like a bird. Therefore, that's kind of how we have so many depictions of angels with, feathered bird wings. With this, we're talking about multicolored, literal butterfly wings.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a good point, too, that I never, going back to the depiction of angels with sort of almost bird-like wings in a way to sort of, if you think about it, really, it's a way that they can be separated from the typical sort of like floating specter.
Right.
Immediately you put wings on them, it makes you think of, oh, these are not evil, they're angels, So that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. All right, so now you've got this family, the Morgans, all right? You got Clay, Melissa, and their 4 kids, Zoe, Emma, Eli, and Luke, okay? Their mobile home was completely obliterated, and the storm, literally ripped the house apart. And this is also just terrifying, man. Clay and Melissa, the parents, were thrown out in the chaos, riding on top of a mattress like they were sliding down a water slide, they said. By some miracle, everyone, their whole family, survived. But during the scramble, 5-year-old Eli went missing. Of course, absolute panic sets in.
Yeah.
They're searching, they're frantic, they keep on searching until finally they find him unharmed about 20 feet away from the house, wrapped up tight in a green rug, almost like a burrito.
Oh, I love this one.
The kicker was that nobody knew, and this is just mind-blowing, man.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where the dang rug came from. So this isn't a rug from their house.
Yeah.
He's just wrapped up in this rug. Eli said that he saw a man with brown hair hovering over him. And who was the man? Was it an angel? Was it something else? He didn't know. In some of these accounts, too, you'll notice they vary. Some people see the butterfly wings, others,
Right.
They don't. And after this next one I'm going to talk about, there's other stuff, too, that's just very different. But this one's kind of wild, too.
Well, hold on, though. I think in this particular one, I think he didn't say anything about wings, but he said his face was basically just light. Like he couldn't see his face, but he knew that he had brown hair and he was a man standing above him.
And what's interesting about that, I'm glad you remembered that. So what's interesting about that too is sometimes, and maybe this would be better, closer to the theory thing, but I have a feeling like I'll forget to bring it up. So I'm just going to talk about it now.
Get in there.
When I read stuff like that, it immediately makes me think of sort of, if there was some sort of, I don't know, you would almost want, whether it is, and sorry to do it, but whether it was a time traveler or something angelic or like a higher power of some kind, and you wanted to sort of be less specific about exactly who you are.
Oh, right. Yeah,
you know what I mean? It would be almost like you can just, I'm like squinting here in the studio as I'm describing this, but you can just make out the features of this like hair, but not the facial features. You know what I mean? And that's just so interesting to me. Okay.
Yeah. Which, by the way, there are several accounts that are also similar with that. And some of them, even on the ones with the butterfly wings, of this, they looked like they were just made of light, or they, their faces were just like a bright light where their face should be. So yeah, there's some strange overlap.
Yeah. It's also kind of like, I don't know why it made me think of this, man. I've talked about this before. One of the first times I took my kids camping, and you want them to feel safe in the dark. And one of the ways that you kind of achieve that is you give them their own flashlight, and they just think it's the coolest thing ever. Well,
Till the batteries die.
Well, no. These are like LED. They're not going to die for a long time.
Bragger.
Although they're going to try. They're going to give it the good college try, because that thing's just on constantly.
The whole time.
But the funny thing is they don't really understand as you're walking like down a dark path to, let's say, use a nearby restroom or whatever. If there's someone else coming their way, the first thing they do is they just shine that light right in that sucker's face.
Right in the face, yeah.
And the whole time I'm just like, point it down. And so that other person, when you get shined in the face, you can only sort of make out like an outline. So it is almost as if it is, going back to what I just said, like this deliberate thing to kind of shield your identity in a way.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of some, like, why would you do that? And so I think when we get back to or later when we're talking about theories and stuff, I kind of have something that I think about that specifically.
Me too.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
We will return after these messages.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
This season, the game begins before the games begin. On August 26th, it's FanDuel Futures Day. 24 hours of deals on all your football season predictions. Futures Day is coming. Visit the FanDuel app to learn more and get your picks ready now. FanDuel, play your game. 21 plus and present in select states. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. All right, this next case is wild. It's the story of two cousins, El Grisby, who was 14 at the time, and his cousin Mason Lillard, okay? Both of them had these miraculous survivals. And in Mason's case, it was an encounter that she swears was with angels. So here's what happened. They were with their grandparents that day, and they were making a stop at Home Depot. I kind of alluded to this story earlier. Mm-hmm. Grandpa goes inside the store while the grandma and the two kids stay behind in the truck. The sky started to blacken, the winds picked up, and then there was that eerie, sort of heavy silence before a storm like this that you can actually almost physically feel.
Yeah.
Grandma tells Mason to get down onto the floorboard and start praying. And then the tornado hits. And this is just a terrifying scene as I was writing this down. It's just imagining this as a kid, but also as an adult is just terrifying. The truck is literally thrown 300 feet, man, across this Home Depot parking lot, like it's just a paper airplane.
Yeah.
When it comes down, the grandmother and Mason are trapped inside, while the other cousin, Elle, was actually thrown out of the vehicle altogether. Also equally terrifying. And then remember, their grandpa wasn't even with them, right? He's inside Home Depot, where the entire roof just gets ripped off and ripped away. But somehow he survived, and when the storm passed, he comes outside frantically searching. Now, 300 feet is a distance, from a store.
Oh, yeah.
And so imagine him kind of looking in the parking lot. He witnesses all this destruction and stuff and not seeing his truck. That must have been just...
Yeah, dude.
Ugh. So he's frantic, and The only way he could even recognize, listen to this, man, the only way that he could recognize the mangled truck was because of his license plate, which is pretty awesome. And I think I would have to do it whenever I get up there in the years.
Yeah.
His license plate was number 1, Grandpa. Okay, so that's the only thing that he recognizes, man. It's just like this mangled truck, and then that license plate is what clues him in. Oh, that's my truck.
Wow.
Inside, Mason had been impaled through the shoulder by this metal rod that came through the roof. Surgeons later said that if that rod had shifted even an inch in either direction, she would be dead.
Yeah.
It took rescuers 45 minutes, man, just to free her from this. Now, here's the part that kind of gives me the chills here. Right before the tornado hit, when the winds are just screaming by, Mason says she felt that a hand pressed down firmly on her shoulder. She thought it was her cousin Elle, but when she turned, it wasn't him. She says she saw 2 figures, men in robes, one with brown hair and one with blonde. To her, they were angels, standing right there in the truck with her. Mason said in that moment she knew that God was with them, whether it was to carry them away or to let them stay and do something greater. Elle, the cousin that was thrown, never saw the beings, and he was rushed to the hospital later. And it gets even a little bit stranger, man, because at the hospital, they actually thought that he was dead. He was actually placed in the morgue.
Oh, right.
Now, a worker there, Tracy Dye, was walking through, and for some reason, she just happened to kind of like lay a hand on his arm. And Elle, this kid, screamed. He wasn't dead at all. Doctors then rushed him into surgery that lasted 6 hours. And that chance touch, man, this lady walking by in that one moment saved his life.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
So these 2 kids, a mangled truck, angels in robes, and a literal return from the morgue. I mean, that's just the epitome of rad strangeness.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then this one is kind of one of the most different of all of them, I think. And it feels like it's something straight out of folklore, really, because there's this pastor, and he was leading his congregation when the storm hit the church. Everyone scrambled to the basement, but the tornado ripped the whole building apart. The walls collapsed straight down into the basement, pinning people under tons, like literal tons of rubble. Witnesses say that 6 massive men suddenly appeared, lifted the rubble with impossible strength, freed the people, and said that they had more to help. Like, in other words, these massive dudes are lifting this stuff out. People are filing out, and they're like, all right, they're looking around. We've got more people to save, and they just like run off. When official rescuers arrived later, they said that no one else had been there. And then the rubble itself was way too heavy for 6 men to lift.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And finally, man, maybe one of the strangest of all, but kind of one of the most famous. I sort of saved it for the last year. 14-year-old Emily Huddleston was driving home from her brother's graduation when the tornado picked up their car and hurled it 2 blocks. Everyone in the car survived and was pretty much unscathed except Emily, who was badly injured with this debris that kind of came through the car and impaled through her leg.
Oh, yeah.
During her long recovery, Emily began to notice something bizarre. Butterflies seemed to flock to her constantly. They'd land on her arms, her hair, her hands, her hospital bed. She said, and this is a quote from her, that they won't leave me alone. I think they're my angels. I think it's a sign that they were there that night. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, with all of these cases, every single one of them, these children and adults were seeing these things without ever hearing about anyone else's encounter or experience.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's the thing where I feel like the skeptics just sort of pounce on. But it's like all of these accounts were sort of, I don't know what you would say, like sort of corroborated after the the initial event, so a
Right.
lot of and I think these sort of stories started coming from like a lot of the hospital workers and EMTs, rescue, that kind of thing is like, they started talking and it was like, hey, I rescued this family and yeah, my kids also saw these butterfly people, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, obviously you're always going to get the mass hysteria thing and oh, well, it was just made up because, one person said it. And it's just like, I don't know. To me, this one...
It's a bit different in a way because it's like all of these stories they weren't isolated tales, It was almost like, well, I think the proof is in the pudding here in that the town itself, Joplin itself, sort of embraced this because it happened to so many people. It was such a common thread throughout this tragic event that it got to the point where people were just, you're at the grocery store, you're in churches, coffee shops, everybody's just like, wait a second, that's weird because my kid, and they've embraced it so much so that the city actually commissioned a mural in downtown Joplin that they call Butterfly Effect, Dreams Take Flight, painted by this gentleman, Dave Lowenstein, which honors this legend. And it's got this huge, vibrant butterfly wings across this brick wall as a reminder of survival and hope. And, reportedly too, everywhere in the, instead of garden gnomes and stuff, they have butterfly statues in the yard. And, it's just like a big thing there. So this is sort of the time where we kind of start to question, okay, what are we actually dealing with here?
Yeah.
Are we talking about, guardian angels? Are we talking about, I don't know, like a hallucination born from trauma? Are we talking about coincidences, sort of, I don't know. It sounds even silly to say that. Well, it's all just a coincidence that someone,
Yeah. Or is it just a hoax? I mean, that's...
Yeah. Is it just a hoax? One that the entire town was in on and decided, let's paint a wall.
Yeah.
And it's different.
Which, by the way, I do think... I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's all right.
But I like
you
it.
got it.
No, I do think it's cool that, like, the town has sort of adopted the butterfly as, like, sort of a symbol of, like, hope and sort of resilience and stuff. I think that's kind of cool,
Oh, for sure, man. And I mean, it's such a tragedy, it's hard to, that's what I kind of meant in the beginning, and I probably didn't articulate it well, is that it's hard to be sort of overjoyed and excited about talking about a topic that revolves around such a tragic event. You know what I mean? But it's something that I think is super interesting because, well, there's so many aspects of this. These survivors, for example. You'd hear about things like survivor's guilt, right? Maybe like the one person that survived a plane crash, like, why was I chosen?
Oh, for sure.
You think about these kids now, 14 years later, they're adults and thinking, there's a ton, living in Tornado Alley every single year.
Yeah.
There's tons of tornadoes. There's tons of people that died. Are other people seeing butterfly people? Why us? What is it about us? You know what I mean? That's just something that, like, it's just tough for me to quantify,
No, I think that's interesting because, so I discovered kind of late, so I haven't had the chance to watch it. But there is a documentary that was filmed back in 2022. I think it came out in 2024, which is funny because I remember telling you about this, and I was like, yeah, and I've read about this documentary that was filmed, but I don't know that it's out yet. And so we just discovered where you can actually rent it on the site. But it's just called The Butterfly People, and it's by a guy named Gregory Fish. And so he's like a Joplin native, and he's like a filmmaker. And I wasn't able to see or watch the documentary before we recorded this, but I did have the chance to listen to him on an interview on a podcast while I was cutting my grass like a real man. And he had a few interesting things. And to your point, like with this, I really am kind of torn because, like I think there's so much sort of rad strangeness in the butterfly thing and the butterfly wings. I feel like it would be a little more expected, the angel sort of aspect of it. I feel like that's like, oh, well, of course, like, these angels came in and saved him. But I will say, despite my love of the high strangeness in this, one of the things that he said when he was interviewing, he kind of like kept like a sort of a personal sort of tally as he was interviewing all these people. And he said the one thing that tied every single people that had a butterfly person or angel sighting in this, every single one of them prayed to God. Because it's a pretty religious town, and Christian or not, if you're listening to the show, take with that what you will. But I will say, like, and we've discussed this, like, over and over, fully believe that there's power in prayer, even for the most sort of stone cold atheist. You hear these stories of like alien abductions and stuff that shouldn't have. And I was just talking to my buddy Jesse about this the other day, but stuff that shouldn't have any kind of like quote unquote like spiritual sort of element to it, but like, like alien grays are walking toward them, and then they'll just yell out the name Jesus, and it's like whether they
wait, the alien grays yell it out?
No.
Okay.
So
I was like, man, I've never heard of that.
No.
We're starting this episode over.
No. But it completely dispels these aliens. They disappear, poof, whatever. But the interesting thing is the person who yelled out the name of Jesus. A lot of times those people are just straight up atheist, and they don't believe in it at all. But that's just the first thing that kind of just comes to their mind. And even though they don't believe, there's still like power in that, which I think is really cool. And so I don't know, whenever you were talking about like this sort of, guilt of like the 161 people who didn't survive, it is interesting. And I'm not saying like, oh, they deserve.
Yeah, because like but the hard part is there's other people who have been put through some nasty stuff in the world and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm sure that they were praying throughout it. And
right. I just found it interesting because the guy, the filmmaker, was talking about how he didn't want it to specifically be like a Christian documentary, but he said, he is a Christian, and he said, so I was just kind of like, I started to realize, and I started keeping it like a personal tally, and started, just asking, okay, what were you doing moments before? And I mean, obviously, you're in a horrible situation, so it's kind of like standard. Of course, you're going to be praying, but he said he just found it interesting that all these people that did have these sightings were like basically saying, yeah, moments before I was praying, which I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah. For sure.
And the other thing, too, to kind of veer a little bit away from that is...
We'll return after these messages.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures
from another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
This is Joshua Cutchin, and you're at my home for weirdness. That would be rad.
Around this area, so I guess back in the 20s in Joplin, there were these things called the Joplin spook lights. Did you read about this?
No.
Yeah, so it was like a thing where people were like seeing these like sort of flying lights, and they would just kind of fly around, and then they would, they didn't really behave like meteors or anything like that. And then also, we had our Mothman sightings, back in Point Pleasant, 1969. But then also in Chicago, there's like a big flap of Mothman sightings in the 2020s. And then in Kansas City, in 2021, there was a huge flap. And Kansas City is only like 2.5 hours away.
Wow.
So I think that's like kind of cool,
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that I did find when I was kind of looking for parallels, I knew that you'd probably, that's why I kind of ignored the sort of Mothman type stuff or things like that. One of the parallels I think that that exists out there with this kind of stuff is other disasters
Yeah.
Where people have talked about seeing, not necessarily butterfly people, but glowing figures that guide them. Sort of, for example, 9/11, the tragedy, September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
People talked about glowing figures guiding them out of the smoke. In other natural disasters across history, survivors sometimes report mysterious strangers helping them and then vanishing.
Yep.
In UFO lore, there are cases of children seeing tall, glowing beings in times of danger. And even in folklore, you and I talked about this before we hit record, but like the third man factor, where mountaineers report an unseen companion helping them survive impossible climbs. Now, I didn't really know, I knew the general concept of this quote unquote third man factor. What's interesting is I didn't know where it came from. And if you'll permit me.
Wait, can I guess real quick?
Okay, well, you probably already know, so it's not a guess. Cheating. Go ahead.
Is it related to, two, can I get like two guy guesses?
Go ahead.
Is Carl Jung or Joseph Campbell associated?
No. Okay, so the name comes from Sir Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition in 1914. Yeah. Shackleton and his 2 men were near death. Okay, they're trekking across this South Georgia island, not Georgia, not where we live. Okay,
way far away.
Yeah. Later, Shackleton wrote that he felt an unseen presence walking with him, a fourth man in the group.
Yeah.
Though none of them ever counted more than 3, and so each had independently felt it but hadn't mentioned it at the time. With these accounts, the presence isn't always seen clearly, but some survivors describe it as a voice, a figure just ahead, or even a physical nudge or push in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's usually described as comforting, calm, directive, and almost like a silent guardian. Examples kind of pop up everywhere. Mountaineers, people stranded on Everest or K2 report companions urging them on when exhaustion should have killed them. Shipwreck survivors drifting at sea have felt someone sort of keeping watch. And of course, like I said earlier, 9/11 survivors. Of course, psychologists often frame this as the brain creating a protective hallucination, which in and of itself, by the way,
kind of fascinating.
It's extremely fascinating and really pretty amazing if we get back to, hey, our minds are so powerful that we're able to do that.
Right.
And if we're able to do that, and it's in essence creating another being that our mind thinks is real, boy, now we're starting to talk about, what are we talking about when we talk about tulpas and all these other things that our mind can do, right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, the butterfly people kind of feel like they fit into a similar category of these beings that appear. Here's what's also so interesting about this. You're in this moment of tragedy, trauma, horror. It's just, you're this heightened level of fear, and something like this appears, and rather than be like scared or skeptical of it, or maybe these creatures are the ones that are starting this scary tornado, immediately everyone feels calm.
Yeah, right.
And they feel this safety,
Yeah.
And even though a lot of these, a lot of them were butterfly wings, a couple of them were just, what the kids described as angels.
Yeah.
And then there you got the 6 sort of like big, tall, strong helpers or whatever. It is interesting in the sense that, I don't know, man. It's one of those things that is absolutely fascinating, and I can't believe.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never heard of it.
Well, a couple things. So I ran across sort of a Reddit thread, and there was a girl who was talking about her dad was a fireman, like on the scene when everything happened. And, they're doing cleanup, and I think it had already been like 24 hours maybe. And he said, because apparently, I guess this girl was like on some sort of like paranormal thread, so obviously she's like into this kind of stuff. And she was asking her dad about, did you ever see like any of the butterfly people? And he said, no, I never saw anything like that. I did hear about it, probably a year after. But one thing that was kind of strange is I think I may have talked to and seen an angel. He said that he was coming out of a building or coming out of an area, and he said a man comes walking up calmly, and he has white jeans on, a white shirt, and it looks like he has nothing, nothing's wet, nothing's like dirty, just like total white. And he basically says like, hey, there are people buried under a nursing home nearby. And so the man leads the firemen, and they're kind of heading into like where the entrance would be. And he said the man like goes around, and so there was so much like wreckage that if this guy wouldn't have known about it, who knows how long it would have been until they would have found it. But the guy goes around the building and starts like lifting sort of wreckage or whatever, and the fireman, I guess, starts joining in, lifting so he can kind of get to like a door or some sort of opening. And he said when he sees like that there's like life in there, that there's like people underneath there, he says he like looks up and he's the only one there, which is so fascinating. The other thing that was interesting is, and I kind of want to see the movie specifically for this, but that documentary that I was talking about on the podcast where they were interviewing him, there's one thing that he talked about that was kind of fascinating, and it was so different from any of the other accounts that he talked about, a lot of the ones that you brought up. But he said there was one account where there was a girl that said that there were, she also saw the butterfly people, one or two of them, and they were sort of shielding her with their wings. And she said that she could see like, I guess like past them, and it looked like, in sort of this spinning, whirling dervish of debris and everything kind of up in the sky, she was seeing like what looked like darker beings.
Wow.
Like bad guys.
Oh, wow.
So it was almost like they were like fighting, but then these were like protecting her from like whatever those things were.
Man.
Which is kind of amazing. I mean.
Yeah, it's really cool well, again, it's hard to say something.
Yeah,
like, man,
right.
that's really cool. It caused so much destruction. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That concept of there being things inside there, there's a battle going on.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think that, so the reason I brought up earlier, like the Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell thing is because they're, obviously they're kind of fathers of the idea of like the archetype or like the monomyth. And so a lot of the skeptics kind of lean into that and say, oh, well, the kids were all seeing the same thing because like what you were saying before, it's like when our brains are faced with trauma, they generate like an archetype or like a hero or like a savior. And so that's why they all look the same. But it's like, I mean, I don't know. I did look into...
Yeah, but like about that specifically, I feel like so I read something as well about this. It was like one person's take was it seemed more like this is how they wanted to, when I say they, I mean the butterfly, quote unquote, butterfly people, wanted to be symbolized in a way that these children, even young, could sort of remember, And so a butterfly is one of those. I don't think, when I think of something heroic, even as a little kid, the first thing that does pop into my mind,
not.
Yeah,
it's not it. Yeah.
Beauty and like, okay, maybe, that's, fun or whatever, whenever you're like 3, but...
Yeah, totally. However, I did kind of get looking into, what do butterflies sort of represent? And in many, many cultures, they're sort of associated with like the dead or spirits of the dead, which kind of, I don't want to say it leads this into a darker area, but it is interesting because you did have a lot of destruction, a lot of suffering and pain and death.
Yeah.
But I looked and, so basically in ancient Greece, you have the god Thanatos, which represents like death. And so he has wings. But then his twin sister, which is called Psyche, who is the goddess of the soul, is often shown like having giant butterfly wings, which is cool. In ancient Mexico, butterflies represent the souls of the dead. In Germany and Ireland, they are typically looked at as the souls of departed children. In Japan, butterflies are looked at as vessels that carry spirits of the dead and represent like recently departed souls. and then there's also, going back to the like Carl Jung kind of thing, butterflies are sort of the number one sort of visual basically for, some sort of like transformation. So it starts out as like a caterpillar or a worm, which is sort of on the ground, and then it goes into this sort of chrysalis, which is almost like it's kind of like a casket, really. And then it comes back out as a butterfly with life, and it's able to fly and be free and all that stuff. So, like, I don't know, like, where all that stuff kind of ties in. One thought that I did have, which is way in the left field. Well, are we getting into...
Yeah, well, let's talk about what we kind of think.
Okay.
I know I jokingly mentioned it earlier in terms of, like, time travel. But I did read someone else, not me, someone else kind of talking about it in those terms, they were kind of saying potentially, they were talking about how it could have been someone who, not necessarily time travel, but came to that exact moment that were somewhat known to those children and families that would have been known potentially or recognized. And so that's kind of how and why they were sort of shielding their identity by just like blasting them with bright light in those moments, utilizing things like butterfly wings, because as a kid even, you're not going to be fearful of something that you associate with
like pretty,
calming in nature and stuff like that.
Or like even like the rainbow colors. It's beautiful.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because like even bird wings might be like, whoa, that kind of could be potentially scary. But a butterfly wings is not threatening, And so that's what they were kind of saying. And then whenever I read that, first thing I thought of was like, finally, I'm not the only one that kind of associates some sort of time travel.
Okay.
But then I started thinking, like, when I think about time travel and that kind of stuff, and I think in a broader sense, if time is, if it works differently, if you're, let's say, able to move across different, this makes me think of our D&D campaign, but when you move across different planes of existence,
right?
That if you are able to pinpoint like a time, then yes, it's not necessarily time travel, but you are kind of, traveling in time, so to speak, And so with this one, that's kind of what I thought would be kind of a neat idea is people who came back and I don't know, man, it's just very hard for me to stop thinking about the fact that if it were me as a survivor, I mean, even just, I'm not a survivor of something as tragic as this. And I constantly think about my responsibility as like a parent, as a individual on earth at this time to add something to the world and to
make it better.
Not just, sit in my rump and not do anything. Like I feel like I have this inherent responsibility to utilize the, as we would say it, God-given talent, as others would say it, talent. And so being one of these kids, if for some reason they just happen to be listening to our show, I would hope that, in some ways they don't feel the just crazy amount of pressure that must weigh down on them, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say that. But as far as what I think is going on, is it angels? I don't know. But I also can't stop thinking about Jack Black saying, "Be you angels." Anyway, I don't know, man, is the short version of the story.
Okay.
Maybe something angelic, maybe time travel.
Cool.
Or interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, a few things. So one thing that I also looked up, so apparently around Joplin, back in the old days, there were a good bit of lead and zinc mines. And in the 20s and 30s, there were like multiple collapses, and they would show up in papers, and the miners that were spared and that would survive in these which is probably one of the scariest things that I can think could happen to you. You're in a mine underground and a collapse, and you're just stuck there, But a lot of these cases, or not a lot, but several of these cases, the miners would talk about these glowing beings underground that would lead them out, which again is fascinating. And it's like, is there a connection from this to these the Joplin spook lights that were also seen in the 1920s? And then secondly, I think is there a tie-in to, there is this idea that in natural sort of disasters, whether it's earthquakes or huge storms or, tsunamis, or hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, there's this idea that like, well, are they opening like portals or whatever? And to me, I kind of think that's an interesting idea. And are those portals like, or are they sort of opening up the entrances? Could it be like a fae thing or like an elemental
That's interesting
thing?
that you said that, man. What if not only, let me take it to a different sort of, well, I hate to say spin on that with a tornado. I'm just like full of the puns today, but a different angle.
Okay, yeah, we'll take
with the same idea. And that is, what if instead, maybe they're not opening the portal, what if they are the portal?
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, also, if you look at it from like, biblically, you hear terms like thrones, principalities, these different kind of spiritual beings throughout the Bible that much like you've heard the term like the like Prince of Persia kind of thing, or like it's like these like spiritual beings have kind of jurisdiction around like certain areas. So maybe because, and again, this isn't, well, it kind of is, but like, because it's such a like highly sort of religiously focused area, it's like maybe these beings were there all along. And it's like they're just sort of, activated, if you will, to like help out as much as they can or whatever. Especially, if you take the story that I was talking about with the girl who, again, totally unscathed, that was protected by those two, butterfly people, but she could see beyond them. That there were those black figures that were I can't remember if he said that she had said that like they were like throwing stuff or like almost like they were just shielding her from like whatever they were doing to like attack or something. You know what I mean? I mean, it's strange and it's very kind of out there, but yeah, I have had this belief for a long time that, with things like Mothman and even with the butterfly people, the blackbird of Chernobyl, and I think there was even one in like the Fukushima disaster. But it's that idea of like harbingers of doom. Like they're just messengers. They're here to like scare people away. Hey, don't go on the Silver Bridge. Hey, don't go around Chernobyl. That kind of thing. And I don't know if this is what this is, but I do think that it could be feasible, in my mind at least, that, in the Bible 365 times, what do the angels say to humans? They say, fear not. Because, up until the Renaissance, angels weren't necessarily like these, these baby cherubs with wings or the just regular people with wings, these majestic wings. They were kind of terrifying. Like,
right.
And we've talked about that a good bit lately with like the seraphim, being based on like a serpent, and having 6 pairs of wings and, like 4 heads and like their wings are covered in eyes and there are all these spinning wheels and stuff with like the Ophanum. And it's like, is that what some of this stuff is? And maybe like the butterfly wings, maybe they were, I don't know. Like, is there something in that like that's how the kids kind of like perceive them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then
it's like,
and quick, and even like even the Mothman thing, like it's like, yeah, of course it's like scary, but if he were back, 2,000 plus years ago and he happened to show up in the Bible, would he also have been one to
how
say,
would he have been described?
To say fear not? Because he looks scary or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and then like thousands of years ago and all that, did the angels like figure out, hey, you know what, man, we got to do something different this time. Every time we go down there, they just run away.
Screaming.
And so I don't think this, hey, Carl.
Yeah.
I don't think that black suit and wings, I know you think it's cool. Let's not take it this time. What if we try some butterfly wings?
Let's just shake it up. Yeah.
Carl hates it. Yeah, man, that's interesting. I wonder. I don't know. It's interesting. There's just a bunch of different things that like came into my mind when you were talking about that. Number one, this is a very, very modern account.
Mm-hmm.
If this creature was seen, at 1 AD,
right,
would people just be terrified of it?
Yeah, right.
Over time, and because of just sort of almost like the being desensitized to things. I mean, heck, before we started the show, I was talking about scary movies and stuff.
Yeah.
When we see these kind of things, are we going to be as scared? I mean, I know I will be, but I'm saying just like most people, the Tylers, the Clays, the Joshua Cutchins who want to go and spend the night and see the orbs.
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to be terrified by a Mothman or, I don't know.
Well, real quick though, I do want to say, and it's something that I'm so glad I just thought about this. One of the things that I think the skeptics, and you can even just read it in any sort of, Reddit threads or whatever online forums, like, somebody will be speaking positively about the butterfly people, and then you'll have your skeptic kind of chime in and say, and by the way, disclaimer, I'm not bashing our atheist listeners, anything like that, but I will say there is a little... It just doesn't quite make sense to me because they'll come in on these forums and they'll say, well, of course, it's a highly religious area, and of course, all these kids are going to claim to see angels. But in my opinion, okay, that is so. That's true. It is a highly religious area, and yes, there were sightings that weren't necessarily like Butterfly, a face full of light, these light kind of beings and stuff. But in my opinion, it adds a little more credibility to the fact that these kids are seeing beings with butterfly wings. That is the opposite of the stereotypical.
Right. They're not
angel.
taught that in Sunday school.
Not at all.
And again, I'm not trying to come at it. Like, if anything, I can almost empathize easier with an atheist when we're, or even like somebody that's not atheism,
like
but
agnostic.
Not even that, man. Like, I don't know, people that don't believe anything that is, there's no such thing as paranormal or anything just outside
straight,
of just biology.
Skeptic. Yeah.
I can honestly understand where they're coming from so easily because it is difficult if you're not raised in it to kind of picture this being even a real thing. But the thing about this specific event that I keep on thinking about is just like you just said. Okay, yes, even if it happened like in the quote unquote Bible Belt, and in a sense, I mean, the Midwest in certain areas, you can kind of still kind of include that in that classification, I guess. But, a high percentage of religious folks and stuff, their description of an angel would match some of these things, like the guy with the white robe and the brown hair. You can't see his face. In others, though, it is more like there's no way they're coming up with, it had butterfly wings. That's not what they're taught.
That's nowhere in the Bible. That's not even like close. It's like what we were saying up top. It's so like specific and so sort of niche and just riddled with like high strangeness that to me that aspect gives more credibility. If this whole story had nothing to do with butterfly people and it was just like the angels of Joplin, like, okay, I can see where your hardcore non-believers are just going to be like, oh, this is a monomyth. This is an archetype. This is just, religious hysteria, kind of thing. And they're creating this in their mind because obviously they're ultra religious, but this is like the opposite. So
yeah. And also like, one or two people having that experience in near death, potentially, or that fear and all of those, like, let's say endorphins and chemicals in your body just fueling a potential hallucination like that. There's no way, in my mind, it's difficult. I shouldn't say no way because then that's just also kind of giving in to that easy, that it's impossible. I hate the word impossible.
Yeah.
It's just so hard for me to imagine the fact that, or the likelihood even, that people saw the same thing. I mean, we're all, I don't know, man. It's just wild. And again, this is like, it's even bigger than a lot of, I don't know how many people are in Cleveland, Georgia, but I would dare say more than 50,000. Am I right? In other words, this is big enough to where like these people didn't just live right next door to each other.
Right,
and they were just saying butterfly, butterfly, but all these kids and pastors and policemen and firemen. And, it goes beyond, so far beyond the being able to explain it away. Yeah. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think you sort of referenced this also at the top of the show. I think it's interesting because I believe that the majority, if not all, correct me if I'm wrong, all of like the adults, even the adults that did witness things, did any of the adults see the butterfly aspect, or did they just see, quote unquote, like men in the back seat? Or
most of the time I don't think so. I think all the kids describe it as that. In fact, other than the people that saw like the 6 men,
right.
As far as adults go,
well, there are a few adults, but I think again, if it was sort of on the supernatural side, I think what they saw would be closer to your either just a man in the back seat or a typical kind of like angelic thing. Yeah. But what I'm getting to is I think that's really cool because, okay, say they are angels. Well, then, like what we've talked about on the show 1,000 times with kids, maybe the veil is a little thinner. They're able to see a little more. They're able to like maybe see more of what something or someone actually looks like. And so for us as adults, that, however you want to phrase it, that part of your pineal gland is calcified or whatever. We're only able to see, a regular man at best, or at absolute best, maybe way off in the distance, it kind of looked like he had wings. But these kids who are much more naive, much more open to these things, they don't know that that's not supposed to exist, quote unquote. So like to them, they're seeing like what these things actually really look like. And to me, that's like that's one of the most fascinating parts about this whole thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That like, wild, the adults saw it, but like to them, these sort of quote unquote supernatural elements of this story were just like strong men or, but then the kids, for the most part, they all, were seeing these beings with like butterfly wings.
And I have zero idea about this, and I'm so mad that I didn't think about it beforehand so that I could have the time to look this up. But is there any correlation, I wonder, and I don't need you to answer this, Tyler, but just something to think about, and listeners, if you know the answer, feel free to send it. Is there any kind of correlation scientifically with the visual spectrum that a child can witness or see and
I see.
Someone older? Because I do know there is a difference with what they can hear.
Hearing, yeah.
We talk about that sometimes, that I've told you about that electric lighter, right? Where all the kids are like, and we're like, what?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, I wonder if there's something similar to that with vision, because maybe they do have those wings in terms of and again, I'm getting like more like scientific with it.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the blending of all that,
Me too.
Maybe there's something with the frequency of light that the adults aren't able to see it, but yet the kids are. I have no idea. It could be, the answer is no, there is no difference.
Yeah.
But, something I thought of.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going with like the kids being able to see it. But I like that you sort of pulled it into like a more, like a scientific kind of version of like, kids, as we age, we have like, like our hearing and frequency, we have a die-off in the visual spectrum as well. I think that's pretty cool. Well, if you like this show and you enjoy things like this, join our Instagram. Get over there, join the discussion in the comments. If you have your own story of your own encounter with a butterfly person or a mothman or what have you, shoot us a DM or go over to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. If you would like to tell your story and you're on the brave side, you can do so at our website, thatwouldberadpodcast.com, where you can leave a voice memo and become part of That Would Be Rad history. We're probably eventually going to have a show here soon where we play listener stories and stuff like that. So if you have something that you've been sitting on or stewing on for a long time, maybe an urban legend in your area, a paranormal story, you've seen a ghost or UFO sightings, we want to hear about it. That's the stuff we really, really love. I mean, it's really kind of part of the reason that we started the show to begin with, so that we could, have access to some of this stuff. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is on our Patreon. It's More of What You Love, and that is the Rabbit Trail. And, it's recorded a little later, a little looser, a little goosier, but it's More of What You Love. Tell that friend about the show. Leave a 5-star review, and I guess that's it. You got anything else, Woody? All right, pal. Well, we love you, we appreciate you, and as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. Clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Access granted.
What a crazy...
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never heard of it.
I know.
But I feel like there's so many of those types of things, and that's what's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like every podcast can only ever talk about stuff that's already happened so long ago.
Yeah.
That there's a million different, and I'm sure there's a million different things for this one, but I just like the mystery of it all, man.
Yeah, me too. I do want to rent the movie.
Yeah, no.
And I feel, I don't know, maybe we do I'm probably going to rent it here this afternoon while I'm working. And if there's enough, like...
For like a Patreon or something?
Yeah, we do like a 20-minute Patreon or something. Howdy, guys and gals. Howdy, guys and gals. And what... Quit doing the hit. That messes me up every time.
Shh.